Committee of the Whole meeting to order. And this meeting is being audio and video recorded. I'll start with Curriculum and Instruction Committee. Mrs. Barkas.
Program of studies that we will have the opportunity to hear the changes, review the actual program of studies, and then we will be voting on that in December. So look through it, listen obviously, and then if you have questions between now and December, please contact Dr. Soder directly and she can give you any explanations you may need. The second is a data blender presentation. And thirdly, like an update on how we're doing with our writing program. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Soder.
Thank you. Actually, we're going to get started with Dr. Marchini.
Thank you, Mr. Bittler. Thanks for the opportunity to present changes to the program of study. Just keep in mind that any of these changes are depending on sufficient enrollment for any new courses that we run. And the new courses that we're hoping to run will not impact our current staff. First, start with Honors Calc. We currently offer a college prep calculus and an AP calculus, both A, B, and BC. We'd like to offer an Honors Calc. Those students who want to go at a faster pace, a little bit more rigorous in the college prep, but not quite feeling ready to take the AP exam. The next one will be the CAD 4. We currently offer CAD 3, 1, 2, and 3. Our CAD 3 class is very excited about going into the next level, CAD 4. So because we already have the enrollment in that, we're hoping to move that forward to CAD 4. Biology Keystone Review and Preparation. Students who score basic or below basic on the biology keystone will need to retake the biology keystone exam. This course is a prep course preparing students to retake the bio keystone. Online health course for Health 2. We would like to offer Health 2 in school. We'd like to also offer an online health. This would be a blended program in which students would meet maybe once a week, every 2 weeks, but take the bulk of their course online. And then we'd also like to offer this during the year, but also in the summer offer a similar course for those students who like to take it in the summer. We feel this, we have a lot of students interested. We also feel this would open up the schedule for them to take some more advanced classes and or allow them to have study halls during the day, a couple study halls in which they can add a lab science and or study time. I want to make a couple adjustments to Accounting 1 and Accounting 2, change from the full year courses to semester long courses. Sports Marketing, this would be a minor curriculum modification of our current marketing course, and the emphasis would be on sports marketing. AP Physics B, on your backup information, all you have is the name of course will be changing pending College Board release of information. We don't have enough information about AP Physics B yet. The College Board is proposing to change that to AP Physics 1 and 2, two different courses that would be what we currently teach as AP Physics B. AP Physics C would stay the same. There are some folks in our science department that feel depending on the curriculum changes, they would still like to offer Physics 1 and 2 in the same year, adding a science lab. There's a couple people who would like to offer it as two different courses. We're not sure, even if we offered next year AP Physics 1 and 2 combined, if the College Board is going to offer an AP Physics 2 exam. So again, AP Physics B is more likely going to change two courses, AP Physics 1, AP Physics 2. C would stay the same. We currently have kids in B, so we would offer C next year also. We're not sure how they're going to set up the testing. We're not sure of the curriculum content, how we want to offer that yet. But we want to make you aware that that will be coming in the spring and we will have that on some configuration we'll have on our student schedule. Is there any questions on that one? That one's a little bit tricky. Yeah. We'd like to change some of the language because of the Keystone exams. Members of the class of 2017, which is sophomores and thereafter, must pass the Algebra, Bio, and Literature 10th grade English Keystone examination to graduate. Students will take these end of course exams after completing these courses in May. All students will be offered multiple opportunities to take the Keystone exam in order to demonstrate proficiency. We want to make sure that class realizes, and all the other classes realize, they will have to pass the Keystone for graduation requirement. And in class of 2017 and thereafter, students will receive remediation opportunities. And then mandatory remediation requires students to drop electives or postpone Health 2 until 12th grade. So we want to make sure folks are aware that if they fail the Keystones, they may have to take a remedial course before retaking the Keystone. Obviously, passing the Keystone exam could come ahead or take priority over an elective as they get farther in their coursework. Question? Yes. It's an excellent question and something that we've talked about a lot. We won't really give an option to take it whenever they want. We really want them to get remediation as close to the course as possible. So if they finish biology, they fail at the end of the course, we would like them to get remediation as soon as possible thereafter. Correct. Absolutely. Absolutely. More than likely, we also have, as part of our, school report card, we need to make sure that they have an opportunity to take that and pass it before their junior year. The 11th graders count for our school profile. So if students fail, their freshman or sophomore, most sophomores take bio, they would remediate and take it sometime during their 11th grade year so that when they pass, it does help the school in the school profile, and it's something they can check off for their graduation requirement without worrying about it their senior year. Okay. And then class of 2015, 2016, individualized remediation plans will be developed for all students not reaching proficiency. Remediation will not only assist with Keystone exams, but also enhance skills needed for SATs, current classes, college entrance exams. So we will be offering, although it's not part of their graduation requirement, we will be offering remediation in those subject areas, and it can have a lot of help for students in their reading and math. Retake schedule we're going to have on there. So for literature, juniors would retake in May. Algebra, sophomore, juniors in Algebra 2. Sophomore, juniors not yet in Algebra 2 retake in May. Biology, all students retake in January. So they would have remediation for a semester and retake in January. Any questions? Yes. We had an agreement or a contract through Brandywine Virtual Academy run by the intermediate unit. And a number of students took that opportunity and were able to fit in their lab science and or study hall for their junior year. We don't feel that that course is rigorous enough. We think it was okay for what they offered, but we feel that our own staff can do a much better job and really design it as we do so the kids have the same experience they would get as in the classroom. No, well, this will be the only online health class offered. So if we're offering it, we feel that the students, we're not going to approve other online health courses from outside if we offer it ourselves. If it's during the school year, we would have a teacher teach it as part of their regular duties. When we offer it in the summer, we usually have a large enough enrollment with a tuition cost for the summer for the student to offset the cost of our instructor. just a break even. The students paid for that. Yeah. So if it's in the summer, the students would pay. We would charge just enough to break even for the cost of our instructor. During the school year, it would be part of our staffing. When we do scheduling this year, we're going to ask the students if they plan on taking the online health during the school year next year, and then plan accordingly. So when you see upcoming scheduling numbers later in the year, you'll see an online health and the number of staff it would need. That would just offset the number of staff that's not needed for the in-school or in-classroom program. So the same amount of staffing, just a few sections of online health and a few sections of health in the classroom.
There's also proposed legislation in Harrisburg that will require all public schools to offer a blended approach. If that passes in the next year, we need to be prepared to move forward. So our plan, it's really a 3 or 4 year plan, and we'll talk more about it in the spring, to add a course each year. Perhaps look at mathematics next, because we've had some success in summer math enrichment, move that online, and really 3 to 4 years from now offer a full blended approach. That way we can help some of our special education students who might need that blended approach, but also go back and try to recruit kids back who do not attend the district. Maybe they go to cyber charter, but they would benefit from a partial schedule. So we're working with our teachers over the next several years to keep adding courses.
Dr. Christian, one of the sessions I attended at the conference, the PSPA conference, showed a successful blending program, and a district ran their own cyber program, and they drew dozens and dozens of students back from cyber schools to their own in-house cyber school. They had some incentives to do that, but economically it worked out fine. But you're pointing out something here. You mentioned Harrisburg as an issue. This is still a politically charged issue, and more and more districts are stepping forward showing how expensive it's going to be to implement the Keystones, especially with the retake schedule and the remediation that's required. You can back me up on this. Isn't the number thrown out now? It's up to about $1 billion that the superintendents are estimating it's going to take to. So the point is,
Yes.
This might not be permanent. We don't know how long the status quo is going to remain.
Thank you.
Still on? Yeah, leave it on.
So this evening we have Kelly Bean and Jackie Kirby here to give us a demonstration from Data Blender.
Wait a minute. We're up to Data Blender?
Hi, thank you for having us tonight. My name is Kelly Bean. I'm the instructional support teacher over at North Coventry Elementary School. And I wanted to give you a presentation and talk about instructional support teachers' perspective of using the Data Blender. Right now, we have two specific uses. I'm going to be talking about how we use the Data Blender during data team meetings. Jackie Kirby is going to be talking about how the Data Blender is used during the instructional support team meetings. So they serve two very different purposes. The purpose of data team meetings and using the Data Blender is to address the learning needs of groups of students. Whereas, that's okay, with the IST meetings is to address the learning needs of one particular student. We use this to be able to make the data decisions in order to get to the student success that we're looking for. During data team meetings, we're looking at groups of students. The meetings are held by grade level, and they do include all team members. So when you think about that, we're including learning support teachers, reading specialists, anybody that works with any of the children. And during that time, we're looking at interventions and action plans that we create to address those specific groups of students. During the meeting, we analyze the most recent data that's available. And so one good thing that the Data Blender has really been able to bring to us is the information that's accessed, that's input is accessed immediately, and it's accessed by all members of the data teams. So if we would log in on the Owen J. Roberts homepage to the Data Blender, this is what it would look like. And just to give you an idea, this is not our real data. This is the home page when we would log in. If you take a look in the left-hand corner at the bar graphs, that graph is constantly changing as it scrolls through the most recently updated data. The information then is able to not only take a look at the whole group's performance on that task, but if I look at over on the right-hand side, I'm then able to go to other tests that were given or other assessments that were given. So when I first log in, if I want to look at groups of students' performance on a single assessment, I'm able to take a look at that. So let's say, for example here, I would be looking at grade 5 when the PSSAs were given for math for a group of students, and I would be able to say, for example, that 61% of the students were advanced. From there, I would be able to drill down into the data and take a look at exactly who those students were. If I would click and I see that the advanced students, I range, here's a snapshot, I'd be able to then drill down further to see, okay, exactly how did that particular student perform. And this is a screen that would pop up. So I have the students' first and last names. I have the PSSA performance on the right-hand side, and you can tell where it says total, 1275, that would be the cut score for proficiency. And then the scores are color-coded from there. So it breaks down their performance in PSSA across the different tested areas. So I would have the comprehension, interpretation, multiple choice, and the open-ended response. There's a legend at the top, it's circled, and that tells me what the cut scores for each of those areas would be. It also allows me at this time to click on any of those arrows to sort the data according to whatever strand I'm interested in. So that would be one example. Another example of how this is used is to look at blending the student data. And this is important because we're looking at the performance on 2 different assessments, not just one. So, for example, if I wanted to see how students performed on DIBELS in grade 6, and I wanted to see over time, the first time they took it, I wanted to take a look at their composite score in January, and then I want to take a look at how they did in May to see if there are any trends. I would be able to blend those two and make a comparison of the different assessments. The power of this is the blending of the data, and it allows us to look at student performance on multiple assessments at one time and not have to go back and forth between documents. It's very easily accessed. And as a team, then we're allowed to look at the areas of strength as well as identify the areas of need. And when we do identify the areas of need, that's when the team works together and we come up with plans to address those specific areas. From there, we can create groups that are identified within the Blender, and any teacher working with those students are able to then access that information. So this is the key to Data Blender. The symbols at the top, the home button, just like ET, we want to go home to get wherever we want to go to next. We click our home button, and from there we're able to make our groups or look at specific student data. So we're going to talk about what it looks like in the group view. So as an IST, what I would be doing is taking a look at the students and saying, okay, these are the students after our data team meeting that we've identified as a tier 2 or tier 3 student. We've created groups. Anyone that teaches that student or works with that student now has access to that group of students. So if I wanted to take a look at my reading tier 3 group in grade 3, the beauty of this is that now I have pictures to go along with it. So as many times as we hear about students, we can put a face to their information. The team does. The team creates the groups. Yep. We use the district criteria and go through it and work through to identify who the students are. Nope, Data Blender isn't that smart. So we have our groups created, and if you take a look at the column all the way on the right where it says tier history, I can click on any student and take a look at the interventions that have been put in place for them. So if we take a look, we can look at the first student, we can see that the last change of instruction, when that occurred, what interventions were in place, how often the intervention was in place for them, who it is that worked with the student, and taking a look at how often or how frequently they're meeting with their tier group. So it allows us, if a student is working and making the progress they need, we're going to continue the intervention. However, if something's not working, we need to know what part of it needs to be tweaked. So I wanted to talk about how the Data Blender has changed data meetings, and it's quickly accessible by all the participants before the meeting, so they can take a look and come in prepared. During the meeting, because it's live data, and after the meeting, because they can always go back and take a look at the interventions that are in place, and it doesn't take us all coming together as a team to be able to do that. And I'm not the keeper of the data. Everyone owns the data. Everybody has a stake in it. Performance is tracked over time, and it allows us to see if interventions that have been put in place before have been successful. And the other perk is that the pictures do make the data real. They tie them back to a real person. So now Jackie's going to be talking about the individual student level and what the IST meetings look like now using the Data Blender.
Any questions on the first part? We have the big data meetings where we meet with the entire grade level and the support staff that deals with those students once to twice a year. But they're very big, long meetings. Then we have our small check-ins every 4 weeks. And sometimes they're weekly. So then we have our mini check-ins every week at our small grade level meeting. So we can say, if there's anything that comes up with the student, we can check in weekly with them. So I guess every month we're checking in as far as if we need to change a child's tier group, because they're all fluid. So, yeah, every 4 to 6 weeks, a child can move in and out of a tier. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yep, they're very fluid and flexible. Sure. We monitor the progress. So we have progress monitoring probes, for example. So we'll use running records or high-frequency sight words or whatever we've chosen at our data meeting to progress monitor that student. So every single student that's put into a tier 2 or tier 3 status is progress monitored, no matter what. Exactly. So if we see incredible growth for some reason, we're like, oh, you know what? Maybe that student was put in the wrong group. Let's move them out. We do whatever we need to do to accommodate the student's needs. Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll move on. So now we're going to go to the individual student IST meeting. For example, if I was meeting with a parent about a student. So the purpose of the meeting is to address the learning needs of one particular student, obviously, and then the meetings are held with parents or guardians of a student, teacher, principal, and the instructional support teacher. The intervention plans are then created to support the needs of the learner and to monitor their progress. And at that point, I will go to the Blender and pull all the information I need to. A lot of this has taken the step away from me having to go to the teacher and bother them, for use of a better term. You can skip that part. So when I go to an individual student snapshot, I have a plethora of information on their profile. I don't know if this view shows it, but Dr. Monahan has put in their old report cards, which is a huge help for us because I can see if they were proficient or basic, et cetera, on all their past report cards, if they're not a kindergartner. I guess you can see that there at the top. That's what that's trying to explain to you. I have their we, as ISTs, have access to their PSSA scores, how they did on the PSSAs, the breakdown, all of their reading, their STAR math scores, anything you could ever want about a child is at our fingertips as ISTs. And we can pull it up and it's right there. So this is an example of a graph that monitors their tier process. So we have, you can have a behavior tier, a math tier, and a reading tier. So if we're monitoring the student's behavior or their math or their reading,
you can see on the plot as their Fountas and Pinnell benchmark assessment systems were put in here. You can see at each date when their reading level was put in. So we see the graph, and this child clearly has made progress at the end. But in the math tier, at the bottom, if you're looking at the graph, it has slowly gone down. So we would want to change that student's intervention, and that's where this is so helpful to look at. Sure. So the color coding here, if you look at the light pink or salmon, it is basic. And your light blue is proficient, and the orange pumpkin is low basic. I was actually going to call it butternut squash. And then your dark blue, is advanced. So also in the legend, we have what it needs, what the benchmarks are. So when we're in a meeting, we can tell that parent, okay, here's where your child is, here's where they need to be, and then here is our district average. So we have all those benchmarks right at our fingertips.
It's important to note when they have their grade level meetings, though, and the school level meetings, if they notice some trends, for example, the student starts with open-ended responses in mathematics. If they see that trend in that grade, they go back and look at that for order of operation. That's where they really get a lot of richness in the dialogue.
And for example, at East Coventry, we have our SOAR groups that we're making for the spring. So what we'll do is we'll make our SOAR groups on the data blender, for example. And then our SOAR groups are based on PSSAs. So then we can look at all those students in our SOAR groups and say, wow, we have a huge need in our multiple choice section for 5 or 6 kids. Why don't we have them work on some multiple choice questions? It's that simple. You know, I mean, obviously we're working on a lot more things, but maybe they just need some test-taking strategies or, you know, problem-solving skills to then work on those open-ended questions, things like that. Things that we didn't have access to before that we can now blend. So this is, before you saw a whole group's tier history, this is a student's tier history. And this is where we never had data like this before. So not only is this her profile, but this was who were her interventionists, were her interventions successful or not successful, how long did they last, and Mrs. Barkas, this kind of piggybacks on your question exactly. So you're saying, did it change, when did it change? So it says exactly how long she was in that tier, who her interventionist was that intervention successful, etc. And was she meeting daily? How long was she meeting for? So you could see she was successful, and she started meeting with her interventionist for 45 minutes. She went down to 30. She was still successful. Then she went down to 15 minutes and only 2 times a week instead of daily. So that's where we're able to see that progress, and instead of keeping that kid in a tier for 45 minutes every single day, she's now only meeting 2 times a week for 15 minutes a day. So that's where we're able to say, hey, she doesn't need this anymore. Let's move her back. Or, uh-oh, she's only meeting 3 times a day. This child needs to meet 5 times a day for an hour. Okay, so then we have our building data managers or our learning facilitators, which is us, because we're so lucky. So we continue to employ the multi-tiered program for instruction, which is our RTI model. And we are continually progress monitoring and inputting all this data on a daily basis. And we are continually identifying interventions and assessments and changing those interventions as the students need them. And this has just been a wonderful experience having this program. So we thank you for bringing it on board. Any questions?
What we have done is we've implemented a system to be able to do that We have our grade level meetings. Every grade meets, 2 grades actually meet every day at our school for 4 of the days out of the cycle. And so during that time, it's designated that we review student progress, whether or not they're designated as a tier 2 or tier 3. And so if teachers are reviewing data and say, I'd like to talk about the student, that's the forum to do it. Because they have the opportunity not only to work with myself or Lori Palmer, our coach, but they also have specialists there as well, and they have their other colleagues. So everybody's working together. No. Correct. Absolutely, which is it's a great forum to be able to do that, because I'm there looking through the lens of a specialist, an intervention specialist. Lori Palmer's looking at it from the curriculum end as the coach, and the teachers are there looking at it from the viewpoint of they're hands-on and they're right there, and what are they seeing and what can they suggest? Once a week. Yes, yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, we are. It will guide parent-teacher conferences in that the teachers will be able to say specifically the tier group that the student is in for the moment, but it'll also be able to give the information as to how they got there, what data led to that decision. As far as printouts, they don't have reports that are specific to give one student profile. But if there is one specific area of need, then we'd be able to share the interventions that are in place to be able to get the student to move on for success. Correct. And what I really like about it is it's not just us saying it's comprehension, it's us being able to show this is the area of need, and this is exactly where we have to get them, and that this is how we're going to get them there. And then also you can tell parents that correct. Yes. Yes. Anyone else? Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, and here tonight we have Vic Cerulli, we have Brooke Lipskin, Stone Stafford, and Lori Palmer, who are here to introduce our writing program for you.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting us to this meeting to share our writing program revisions with you. My name is Victoria Cerulli, and I'm the academic coach at East Coventry. My colleagues and I are going to walk you through a presentation that will highlight all of the revisions that have been made thus far to our writing program, as well as the work that we're engaged in throughout the year to help our students' writing achievement improve. If you have any questions while we're presenting or after the presentation, we'll be happy to take them. But we're going to start with a brief overview, and it just really requires you to read.
Radiated using Zoom.
I understand that's a lot to digest in a very short period of time, but you will have access to the Prezi so that you can think some more about it. At this time, I'd like to introduce Lori Palmer, the academic coach at North Coventry, who's going to talk about how we began our work in August.
Thank you for having us here again tonight. Over the summer, a group of us got together and we studied the Lucy Calkins Guide to the Common Core Writing Workshop. And we studied about her philosophy and how she grows writers. And we also worked on a plan for professional development throughout this school year. In August, we had a great kickoff, and each school completed a professional development where each staff created a Bill of Rights. And you can see to the right where you can see some of the samples of what the Bill of Rights were. This is basically the bottom line conditions for what would constitute a great writing program and what our students deserve here at Owen J. Roberts for writing. We also worked with the staff to establish clear expectations for what writing workshop is, what it looks like, and we had the staff get invested in writing where each staff member has their own personal writer's notebook. So in turn, when the children came in September, the children created their own writer's notebooks. And this is where we keep all of our personal stories because stories are everywhere. And we wanted the staff to also be writing every time that the kids write, because how do you grow writers? You write. And as adults, we want to do that too. So during whole study faculty meetings, the teachers will write. During grade level meetings, sometimes we will write. So we keep our notebooks with us. As we're growing as writers, so are the students here. So that was our big kickoff. And we are continuing to do PD throughout the school year on what the writing workshop program looks like. I would like to now introduce Brooke Lipskin, the East Vincent coach, and she's going to be talking about the writing process? The mini lesson. I was close.
Thank you. Good evening. So once we worked with the staff members to really establish the big picture and the goals within the school for writing instruction, in September we began breaking down the different components of a successful writing program. September's focus was the architecture of an effective mini lesson. The mini lesson is the term for the whole class instructional piece of the writing workshop. It's referred to as the mini lesson because it is short in duration, so that the students have plenty of time afterwards to actually work on their writing and to work with their teacher to get the differentiated skills and strategies that they need. During our whole faculty studies in September, we taught our teachers the architecture that is very predictable for delivering a mini lesson to students. There are 4 components in every mini lesson. The teachers learned each of those 4 components and what each one is made up of. The components are the connection, the teaching point, the active engagement, and the link. Our teachers practiced implementing mini lessons with the support of all of the academic coaches in their classrooms. They also began to learn the other components of the daily writing workshop, which also include what the teacher is doing while the students are working independently on their writing. You'll find out a little more about that shortly, but the teacher is very busy during that time delivering differentiated instruction to meet the individual needs of the writers within the classroom. This is just a This is a sample of what a writing workshop lesson plan might look like. It shows the different components that the teacher is delivering each day. You can also see in the highlighted section that the teachers are learning different methods for delivering effective writing instruction. Very often that will be the teacher actually demonstrating in front of students what the components of the writing process look like. Other times they will be guided to practice components together. And other times the teacher might use a method called explain example, where they prepare a section or a piece of writing in advance and then kind of unpack it and study it with the students to see what it includes. And finally, assessment is an ongoing part of our new writing program, which is going to help make it successful. At the beginning of each new genre or writing unit that our teachers are doing, they're always going to begin by giving what we call an on-demand baseline assessment. This is basically where students are just asked to do their best in writing in a particular genre so that the teacher can see what do they already know about writing in this genre, and then they can use that information to actually guide their planning of the unit. So rather than our teachers just following a formulaic program, they're actually basing their instruction on what they can see that the students are coming in with to help determine what they're going to need to move forward as writers. Teachers are also collecting assessment data on an everyday basis when they're working either with small groups or with individual writers in their classroom, taking a look at what they're able to do and what the next steps might be that the teacher can use to help move them up to the next level. And finally, at the end of each unit of study, students are once again given another on-demand assessment, so the teacher can now lay that side by side with the initial baseline assessment and very clearly see the areas and the ways in which the writers in the class have grown. So I would like to introduce Stone Stafford, who is the academic coach at French Creek.
Good evening. During the month of October, the faculty focused on understanding the writing process, and I'm going to allow you to read the information in the green blue highlighted area on your own. But what I would like to do tonight is really focus on the rehearsal, drafting, the editing, and the revising of units of study. The units of study, instructional delivery, follows the demonstrate, scaffold, and release to write approach. When using the units of study, teachers actively teach the students skills and strategies that have worked well with writers in the past. Teachers specifically teach students to draw upon a repertoire of skills and strategies today, tomorrow, and throughout their writing lives. During the rehearsal phase, the students began to understand that their ideas, knowledge, and experiences are worth writing about, and the importance of documenting these topics in their writing notebook. In the rehearsal phase, students are allowed the opportunity to rehearse with partners before drafting on paper by composing in the air drafts. Students might even begin revising before the pencil hits the paper. During the drafting phase of the writing process, the students actually began to write on paper. The students might write fast and furiously, or strong and long, with the understanding that drafting is like playing with clay, not inscribing in marble. During the revision process, the writer is pretending to be a stranger reading the draft for the first time, imagining what a reader's experience with and reaction to a piece might be. But the ultimate goal during the revision process is to have the writer examine the draft so that a deeper, more nuanced understanding of the draft is achieved. In the editing process, students use editing skills, conferring with partners, and moving toward publication appropriately. And just as the students need to know how to write a narrative or the components of an essay or an informational text, students need to understand that writing, too, is a process: rehearsing, drafting, editing, and publishing. And really, all through the process, we are stressing to the students that we want them to develop a repertoire of strategies and skills that they can use throughout their writing lives, and not just on a particular assignment. And on the next screen, you will see, during October, we used a mentor text called The Important Book by Margaret Wise Brown. And it follows a very distinct pattern. The important thing about a pencil is we use that as an example for a writing piece, and this is the important thing about a writer's notebook. And it goes something like this. The The important thing about a writer's notebook is that it embodies a writer's life, and it just continues to list the most important thing about a writer's notebook. And at this time, I'm going to invite Vic Cerulli back up.
Thank you, Stone. We're almost finished. So you heard what we started with in August, where we went in September and October, and this November, and particularly on November 4th, our Professional Development Day last Monday, we had some intensive work throughout the day at North Coventry, learning the workshop model and conferring. Brooke explained the mini lesson and the piece where the students go out and they do their writing and the teacher has to confer with them is not left to chance. We don't just say, go writers, write, be free, you're writers. We encourage them, but we also, if you remember that progression of skills, we make sure that what they're doing, from what they're doing, that we can take them to the next, their writing to the next level. So we worked in vertical teams, that's K to 6, and we examined exemplar writing workshop models in North Coventry classrooms. We developed a consistent plan for managing the workshop. That's very important to promote productive writing. We also collaborated to improve our instructional practices for conferring with writers. Not only did our teachers make a walkthrough form so that when a principal comes into the classroom, they know what they will see if they're seeing a proper conference with a student. But they also then worked with actual students and videotaped themselves holding writing conferences, which was very, very instructive for them. And they also worked to develop consistent grammar and convention lessons, which is also part of writing, and they also worked to produce digital writing. So I'm going to turn it back over to Lori again, who's going to let you know what our next steps will be.
One quick tidbit about the last slide. If you haven't watched the video, I highly recommend it. It's really great. Our theme for that Monday was Amazing Race, so all of the teachers dressed up in team format. So Kathleen O'Neill was dressed in her 80s. We normally don't dress like that. But it was really put a twist to the professional development. It was one of the hardest professional development days I've ever been here at O&J. We worked, it was incredible, so I hope we have more of them. Next steps for writing. We need to provide ongoing coaching in the classrooms related to the mini lesson and conferring. As coaches, we are in the rooms every day, K to 6, helping the teachers with writing, with reading, with mathematics, with anything that they need. We are in there as a partner and a teammate, helping to ensure that the kids are getting everything that they need and deserve. Focus on writing about reading. Move units of study into the middle school level. They talked about having the Lucy Calkins units of study. We're hoping to move them into the middle school level so that there's a continuum of the writing. Continue with assessing student writing in teams K to 12. We've been looking at writing vertically, K to 6. We would like to look at that K to 12 for instructional planning. Vic talked a little bit about the learning walks. They're really important to us to help us develop our professional developments at each of the buildings. We need to continue to build teacher understanding through the shared lesson plan development. And then we will have full implementation of Lucy Calkins for the upcoming 2014-15 school year, taking this whole year to learn and to study it and then implement it next fall. Thank you for your time. Are there any questions about writing that somebody could answer?
The baseline, the final assessment, and then the actual piece, I'm assuming that they're being worked with throughout, like the writing process. So am I correct in thinking that there's 3 separate opportunities for writing during one genre? Is that like the pre, the final, and then what they work through after the mini lessons and so forth?
So throughout each unit of study, when they're focusing on a different genre of writing, the students have many, many opportunities throughout the unit to work in that genre. So at the start of the unit, they have their pre-baseline assessment, and that's really to provide data for the teacher, for the planning. Throughout the unit, depending on the grade level, they may produce multiple pieces in that genre. It tends to be that the younger grades produce more pieces because their stamina and volume for writing cannot quite sustain as long as the upper grades. So our K-2 students might produce a couple stories a week in a particular genre, whereas our upper elementary students might focus on producing 2 complete pieces throughout a 4 to 6 week unit of study. So it will vary depending on the grade level, but yes, they have lots of opportunities to practice writing in that genre before they're given sort of that end of unit baseline assessment. Absolutely, absolutely. So that's one of the major reasons that we have that pre-baseline and that post-baseline at the end. So not only can the teacher look at the progress and determine the next steps, but they can show the parents as well. I think Vic mentioned also how the teacher is not just pulling, out of the air what that writer needs. We have very specific learning progressions in terms of where each child in each grade level should be and what the next steps are, depending on where they are. So teachers can absolutely share that information with parents at conferences. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Barkas. Takes us to legislative and policy, Mr. Lakoff.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. We have 2 items for this legislative and policy meeting. One is the approval of the regulation relating to these grade offerings, and without dragging us all through the minutia of it, everything that Dr. Marchini told us is incorporated here, correct? I have no questions or comments on it. Mr. Kleinfelter? No. Questions or comments? You want to move to approve that regulation?
Yeah, the regulation, so, I think...
No, we've got an action item here, approve it, so let's do it.
All right.
Second.
So moved, yeah.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Item number 3.2, the calendar design guidelines. Mrs. Barkas, I'm looking at the workflow thing here, and it didn't come through you. Is this consistent with what you want to happen at the IU?
It's exactly the same.
Okay.
Same guidelines, same policy. Everybody's beginning, well, not everyone. Us, Westchester, and IU are beginning on the 2nd. Everyone else is starting the first week in August.
Okay. So that should end some of the...
Last week.
That's what I meant, the last week. Sorry.
It'll end the confusion and discussion that we seem to run into each year. All in black and white. Mr. Kleinfelder?
Are we moving the calendar too, or just the...
Just the guidelines.
The calendar's done.
Is the calendars?
Just FYI.
Yes.
About the policy and number 1, frequently there are a lot of questions about when school starts, and our community is not always looking at policies and procedures, and they're not even sure where to find that information. Is it possible you can have that first item, number 1, those 2 bullets somewhere on the web page, so it's there for everybody to see? Just a recommendation, thought. Because it comes up all the time, it's a surprise to people. And I understand the community is not constantly looking in policies and procedures to find out when school starts.
we can give it a more prominent position on the website.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Mr. Kleinfelter, your concern here about this?
Well, the policy itself is remaining the same. I don't see any changes to that. It's the calendar that I think is in draft, or is the intent to move the calendar forward?
No, it's just the motion is for the guidelines to move forward.
We decided, because the IU released their calendar, Mr. Kleinfelter, about 2 weeks ago, we decided to put a draft calendar with it to show that they were in concert. Because if you remember last year, there were conflicts within the county with the IU services and not all the districts starting on the same date. So the board has traditionally approved the procedures at this time annually. We're ahead of the game producing a draft calendar. It's not approved yet. The board will still need to approve the calendar, but we did want folks to see the start date, and so they would have some ability to plan, because really by January and February, families start planning out the following year.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I wanted to ask a question that slipped my mind. How are we on schedule for these things? Do we have to waive any readings and approve it immediately? Are we okay to go to the next meeting? Time-wise, how soon do they have to be approved?
We have plenty of time.
Mr. Kleinfelder, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear everything you said, so I don't know if you're satisfied or not.
No, I'm okay. I don't know that the regulation's really changing, from what I can tell. I mean, if there is, there's no.
The regulation just here for background and reference purposes for the calendar below it?
I want us to approve it because the regulations are the working out of policy, and you don't want them to contradict policy. So basically what we do when we approve these is say, yes, the regulation is in conformance with policy. So I want to get an approval on that, especially since it was such a contentious issue among districts and the IU for years. We'll finally get all the ducks lined up, so to speak.
But there's no change to this regulation. I don't understand.
I think the first, if we look at the regulation, I think it's just the first paragraph, right?
This is what we adopted in March of 2010, right?
Yeah, I'm okay with it. I still have a concern about having in-service day during election day, but I think there's opportunities for our students to see what goes on in the schools during election, but I'm okay with it.
I agree with that, but I think we're the only two.
And that's fair. I mean, that's, you know, I mean, there's always been debate about, you know, having the schools closed. I think only 2 of our schools are actually used as voting places, so the impact's not that great. But, and I think it would be good if we did, you know, had some countywide in-service days. So it's just one of those things. We're still going to have the primaries open, be open, so I just think it's a good opportunity for the students.
I agree, but we lost that battle.
So I'm okay with the regulation the way it is.
Okay, so make a motion, I'll second it.
Make a motion to approve the regulation 803.1.
Second. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. O'Call. Any other business for the committee of the whole meeting? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We are adjourned. We reconvening at 7:30 for the school